Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I think we have a very good composition of the panel, since we have sort of full scope of representatives from the policymaker, we have the representatives from the developers, and we have representatives from the utilities, and also from the traders. So in this very knowledgeable environment, I think we can sort of start talking about sort of a new instrument which has been offered in the proposal of the legislation. It's the PPA. Just as a short intro to this, and before we kick off, also as it was the case earlier, I would suggest for the audience also, while listening for the panelists, to think of some questions, and at some later stage, then obviously you will be offered the chance to raise your question to all or your selected panelists. Well, as all of us know, that there is this very well-known already legislative proposal in the Lithuanian law on renewables, which currently is, as I understand, on the table in the Parliament. And among many other good things, this draft law also introduces the new concept of PPA. New concept to the extent that obviously on the industry-wide basis, this is, and especially on international arena, this is a usual instrument, but just for those who are probably not aware of Lithuanian particularities, in Lithuanian law we still have a sort of a limitation whereby the physical PPA, so-called physical PPA, is still formally speaking not allowed. Meaning that the generator is not allowed to sell electricity, the renewable generator is not allowed to sell electricity directly to the corporate off-taker, and in order for the company or the corporate consumer to buy electricity, renewable electricity including, they should buy it from the licensed trader. And so this is sort of a door opener. This legislation will be a door opener for the physical PPA. With respect to the virtual PPA, to my understanding, this instrument is available, at least formally available, and could be structured in the market. But will, of course, it's a good chance now will be to discuss: do we how much this instrument is popular. So, as a starter, Ryti, what do you think? What were the main drivers and motivation for the policymaker to introduce this PPA? From the draft notes to the legislation, you can read out that sort of the reason for introducing such a concept. One is sort of removal of an administrative burden, so that the generators would be able to easily sell off their output directly to customers, corporate customers, and sort of not to have the supplier in between. Also, the reference to securing financial stability are sort of referred. So what was the main driver for the policymaker to introduce such concept, and how do you think it will be accepted by the market?
Okay, so is it working?
Yeah,
it's working. Yeah, it's working. Okay, so I will start straightly from the PPA. I will start from the auction system and market design we are having for renewable electricity production and relationship between the producer and consumer. So with the new support system which we discussed yesterday. So we have a system, which is based on a market premium. So usually you have to find the off-taker, to mitigate the risk over the long time, and to this is one of the ways to mitigate this risk is to find a direct consumer to sell the electricity and to sign a PPA. So it's nothing very new to the European market, and this is also I would say there is some forbiddance in Lithuania to do a PPA today, but of course what we are doing is we are removing the administrative burden, because if you are a renewable electricity producer, you want to sell directly to the customer, you have to have the supplier's license. To have a supplier license, usually the producer is just a shell company. So it's for this, and to have also a supplier license. It's what we have seen from the market discussion, that this is a needed step to remove the burden. So this is for the so-called virtual PPA. And there is another part of the so-called sleeve PPA or physical PPA. So for the physical PPA, you can have it today, but of course then there's a question, and we had a discussion already with the market participants. We can have a physical PPA, but then the consumer, there is a question whether the consumer cannot be connected to the grid, and if connected to the grid, how the cost of infrastructure of him connected to the grid is shared. So for the other party, we are still discussing the possibilities to create a consistent regulatory framework. Because on the other side, there is a relationship between the producer and consumer. On the other side, there is also a part of being a part of the infrastructure. So this is I think going to be more discussed in the near future, and I think also some improvements on the physical PPA as well. But going to the PPA per se is not something what we are aiming for. What we are aiming for is to be electricity market functioning on a market basis, and for PPAs are instrumental for renewable energy developers to secure the project feasibility and for the project financing. So, but of course, developers know better what is needed. So I will be there. Yes.
Thanks, Lady. Thanks for very sort of helicopter view on this. But indeed, so if I may now turn probably to Linas and Gediminas on your view, what do you think this PPA in general on this concept, and because the term PPA is very broad, and it covers a wide range of contractual framework, and you can take two extremes that on one side you can have PPA where the generator sort of applies pay as you produce model, meaning that all risks on balancing and default and others are sort of given back to the off-taker, and so the way you produce, then you are paid for what you produce. On the other side, also PPA would be when all the risks on default or balancing or other sort of risks stays with the generator. So, and it still will be PPA. So, what in your view, in practical life, what is PPA, and what market is expecting from these changes, if anything? Do you think it will change something?
Well, you mentioned PPA, so it's called as produced or based on. So actually, all of these possible. So the question is, how mature is the market? So for Lithuania, this is something new. Yeah? So if we are talking about long-term PPA, so this is a 12, 25 years PPA. But fixed price with the variable price, whatever. But say for Lithuania, this is not a problem. Say, as produced, this is not understandable at all. And more than 5 years is also not understandable at all, because the planning in Lithuania was like 4 years, 5 years for the companies, and that's what we hear from the market. That, okay, we can conclude the PPA long term, 5 years. so here, then the next question we are getting. So why should I conclude this PPA? I can go just on the market conditions year by year. So what is the value for me? So and here we are as the companies who are actually trying to secure our investments by the PPAs. We are coming to ministry and saying, well, we need something to offer to the market to be able to offer for you zero. As the state doesn't support us, so maybe there can be some actually initiatives which already introduced for prosumers. So what you maybe noticed, maybe not, but basically prosumers, they already not paying this social initiative tax. So when the PPA is concluded between the producer, the renewable producer, and the consumer paying all the taxes. So it means even this social renewable tax is applied. So we are saying that maybe this way, that the producer, the consumer who is already concluding the PPAs, is already supporting renewable generation, can be exempt from this tax. And then the regulating body doesn't need to administrate it. So, and exclude this part from say, collecting the money and afterwards giving the money to someone. So that's what I would like to say. That say in Lithuania, this is something new. In Nordics, that's already the special name, Mangala agreement is in place, and long term in Lithuania is not so long term like in Nordics. So that's the point, and in this case, to educate the market, the participants of the market, there should be some initiatives. But say if you have a strong balance sheet, then you can do it with the 5 years PPA as well.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks. I think it's good to hear that. Well, at least we all know that this international market it's a well-known instrument, and that hopefully it will have a sort of breakthrough in the Lithuanian market. Gedminai, maybe you have some insights on what's your view on how it will play out in the Lithuanian environment.
So my experience here shows that actually no one in this market knows how to do the PPA properly, because no one has ever done it. So even the players who could have signed it some time ago, they were still waiting for something. So the good thing that there are standardization coming up from European initiatives. There are at least standardized contracts popping up, but even the standardized contract of PPA allows for more than 10 different variations of sharing of responsibility, starting from the full of date, ending to the very basic baseload approach. The whole thing needs a lot of education. So if we, as generators or producers, are really, how to say, in the need to understand those PPAs, and we do kind of try to understand those, the actual consumer, the final consumer, a company in, I don't know, anywhere in Chile, they will definitely not understand the differences of the different potential PPAs, and they will not be able to sign for anything longer than 2-3 years, maybe even 5 is already something I wouldn't imagine a company not playing in the energy sector or not participating, signing anything beyond that. Because how electricity is traded in Lithuania now, that utilities sell it for 1-2 years max forwards. Anything beyond that is very, very rare. So what we're facing is that there is no history, there is no experience, and we need to somehow create that. There is very small example like of PPA that we have closed 2 years ago with a trader sitting right next to me on a very small scale. It was created from scratch, from draft. We learned from the mistakes of what the contract leads to it, but generally it kind of works. I believe there is a bit of a trust issue, when you have to trust your partner. But that is a very important thing when you have a small project, you can live away with that. When you have a large project, the trust needs to be rated. So even if you say that you are able to conclude a PPA with a number of Lithuanian private companies, most likely 99% of those companies will not have a rating, a bank rating, which would be suitable for any financial institution to treat that PPA as financeable. So that creates, another problem. So even though the market is like liberalized and we can do it, does it help in financing? Not really. Then we're left with what we have, and our approach to doing this project is that yes, you have to somehow find the ways how to finance them in a merchant way. And as Giles told yesterday, it's just a question of the cost of money. At higher cost of financing, you can actually find financiers who do provide financing for non-PPA transactions.
Thanks, indeed. I think it's a very complex sort of issue. The first remarks on market education obviously are very much relevant on the risk tolerance by banks, financiers who will anyway have to be involved in this contractual framework is also very important, because if the banks are very conservative, obviously, and the PPA is a known instrument, it may very well be a problem for smooth introduction of this. And therefore, I would probably like to refer to the demand as you as well-known independent supplier in Lithuanian market, how you view it? What's from the customer point of view? If you take, you work with customers, you have a hands-on on corporate demands. Is there a need in the market? Do the sort of corporate players, manufacturing companies which consume a lot of electricity, do they need a demand? Is there a demand? Do they ask for the direct contract with the renewable wind farm, let us say, or other generator? Do they have any motives to do this? Maybe CO2 emission is sufficient driver so that they would jump on such contracts, notwithstanding the fact that virtual PPAs is another option. So what are your views from customer point of view?
Hello to everyone. There is a demand, of course, but it's far behind compared to the appetite of developers, and the sizes of the wind parks. Because, as Gediminas correctly noted, companies are mainly looking for contracts for maybe up to 3 years, and after we conclude the transaction, the actual production starts more or less 2-3 years, afterwards. So it means that if you go to the customer, you're already offering him 5-year or longer contract, already beyond what he needs at the moment, and that is an issue with big companies as well. We had some discussions with big, consumers in Lithuania, in the Baltics, and you can find maybe some interest for 20–30% of their portfolio, but that is it, and then, again, what Gediminas said, the credit thing sometimes is already that, blocks you away from doing something. But I would like to also stress that this is not something uncommon, because we have seen the massive PPA conclusions in the Nordics in 2018, for instance, but already last year it has dropped dramatically, and that's basically because all the major consumers have concluded those deals for a long time, and they also face the same issue that it's difficult to do the corporate PPAs for the smaller companies, so that's a challenge, and the challenge, of course, we have in the Baltics as well, to give a, let's say, 10-year structure, for the PPAs is the liquidity of the market. And, if the liquidity is dropping quite dramatically, in the Nordics as in general, so the Baltics basically we have no liquidity at all. So that means that all the risk basically on the Baltic side is with the off-taker, whether it is the consumer or the supplier. And obviously, many consumers do not want to take the risk for that long. And that's what we get, that the price the developers want and the price that the consumers want differ by too wide margin to get the agreement.
Well, thanks indeed for this. But just to understand correctly and to follow up on your views, would be a right conclusion saying that even in a traditional sort of physical type of PPA, when the generator is sort of willing to have a direct PPA with a corporate off-taker, due to the proper allocation of risks, there is inevitable that a supplier have to come into place and to take off the balancing risk or the default risk or other matters, because the contractual relationship between two parties, when one is the generator and another is a mere corporate entity which is not in energy business, these structures do not work. Is that a correct sort of assumption, and that the sort of at least three parties should anyway have to be involved? So in this sense, this you can say that physical or this traditional PPA, which will now be introduced in legislation, would not actually change a lot. What's
Yeah, I mean, it's correct what you say in that sense. The balancing and trading, portfolio management, they are the major part of the margin basically that you give as a discount to the spot or market price. So without having that on your books in your company, it's quite expensive to develop that, for your own needs, or that should be significantly huge, asset that it's, that it makes still profitable, So then, yeah, we come back to the same thing, that you still need some service provider and still another part. But the other thing maybe that if it is if you're selling as a physical or directly, to the prosumers or consumers, whatever it is that you have to be able to finance it yourself, the wind park, because you will not be able to prove to the bank probably that you will have prosumers for like 5 or 10 years. So that's also an issue, So then it's, you have to build the wind park and basically make the whole business case, for
the credit rating, as you said. Well, Dominikas, maybe your view on this, that Ignitis, we know, is a big group. It has a generator in the group. It has suppliers inside. And referring to Linas' reference on Mankala model, which applies in Finland, whereas there is sort of a direct agreement, which is often can be of the market terms between the generator and customer. My question is just sort of a provocative about intra-group PPAs. Do you see a place within the, for example, Ignitis group to have this PPAs between your renewable generation business and the branch which is consuming electricity, like let's say an office, Ignity office where administration sits, or it's sort of one of the sort of imaginative thoughts of intra-group PPAs, if that's, and if it doesn't make sense.
I'm afraid if the PPA would be limited to the group, the consumption of the office or the management, that would be probably for several hundred kilowatts max of solar capacity would be sufficient to satisfy that need. So if we're talking about wind, it's not really the PPAs have to be of a different volume. And when it comes to intra-group or whatever is I mean, this is probably applicable also to Enefit Green, which has the Enefit as a trading arm or a sister company. But generally speaking, we have to assess the risk of any kind of contracts that we conclude for long term. So whether it's intra-group or it is coming from outside, the most important factor is how do we manage risk. And one of the reasons why it is difficult actually to assess the risk for long term is the uncertainty about the balancing market in Lithuania. And one of the reasons for that is, of course, because it's not entirely clear how the market will change once Lithuania switches to the continental European network. So in that case, I mean, we know that there should be some kind of balancing market created before that, but it's still at an early stage, I would say. And if we look at the forecasts of what would be the price of electricity, the forecast can be completely wrong. I mean, we've seen forecasts, and if I look at the forecast which we saw in 2012, they're by, I don't know, let's say the least 50% off. Would be probably normal to see 7 years old forecasts which are 50% off what we see now today. So, just to rely on the forecast and how we see this going forward is not sufficient. And in addition to that, the uncertainty about the balancing market creates uncertainty and makes it difficult to conclude long-term high volume agreements. There can be discussions about small volume, like and probably for shorter term, but very long-term becomes extremely difficult, or it comes at it might come at a price which is not satisfactory to the developers, or they are not at the level where it gives benefit in terms of providing or getting financing. So, and generally speaking, I mean, PPA is not something new. Like 10 years ago, a bit more than that, everybody was trading on the basis of bilateral agreements. So it's only recently that the country has, or the Baltic states have switched to the open market, and then the difficulty is the term of agreement. So 10 years is difficult to take it for a client, and it is difficult to somehow mitigate this risk.
Thanks, Dominic, indeed. And one of the good things in this panels is so that we get sometimes small secrets become public, and I'm pleased to hear that there has already been a PPA made, at least between Energia and Simlitex, as Evgeny revealed. So what was your view, and how did you, for example, priced in the balancing cost when you have been doing a PPA? And if that's not a secret, at least you can talk in general terms. And in terms of the term of the PPA, we know that the general tendency, of course, the producer would like to have 15, 20 years, as long as the bank would be comfortable to finance it. Obviously, from the off-taker side, the shorter the better because of predictability and so on. So, how did you match the different interests, both in terms of length and in terms of balancing liability? How did you price it?
So, it boils down to the price. So, the longer, the more, and the more responsibility you want from the off-taker, the lesser price you get. So I think the balance that we achieved with the Imlitest was that we had a target which was required by the bank in terms of the length. In our case, it was 5 years for a bank to give a 10-year loan. So that was initial decision from the commercial bank which was financing the transaction. With that outset, we could have easily calculated what's the minimum value of the full offtake that we need to get in order for the business plan to be viable. And with that information, we actually went out to the market, and Imlitex was not the only ones with whom we tried to set it up. The only thing is that 2 years ago, when we started, only Imlitex wanted to take that adventure, and pretty much no other players were interested in doing this transaction because it was A, novelty, B, it was fairly small, C, it was risky. And after doing that, I do see that we've made mistakes. But I think someone from the audience or the experts have told me yesterday during the dinner, saying that you have to make first PPA with a lot of mistakes to know what to expect for the larger one and for the future, and that's what we did. So I'm not sure, Regimantas, maybe you can comment a bit more.
Yeah, what's maybe another side? If you had made some mistakes, I assume on your side you have sort of benefited well from those mistakes, so leveraged it a bit. Yes.
No, I agree. I mean, for us that was also something new. But seeing the project now, of course, there are parts where we underachieved, but there are parts where we maybe overachieved. And in general, I'm really happy that we decided to go for it, and we also learned a lot from what to do differently next time, and what is working already now. So now it's a little bit easier, but since that time many things have changed a lot, and as Dominic has mentioned, we have a totally different balancing model now, and we might have a different one again if the Baltic countries are connected and so on. So that's the biggest issue, and now we are not talking about 9-10 megawatt project. We're talking about 70 or higher projects. So that gives you more risk, more uncertainty, and also on top of that, as I mentioned before, the liquidity within those 2 years even decreased even more. So all in all, now as one of the panelists mentioned, pay as produced is something you can get, but something you will not accept.
Yes. Thanks. Well, and maybe sort of one additional aspect to be raised on new developments, and we have heard those risks and what the developer actually is trying to secure that they would have at least the longer the better PPA to back up the risk on electricity demand. Maybe I would like to comment Linus on, we all know that again, a secret became public that you have been unsuccessfully bidding, and we know that you will anyway, we assume that you will develop sort of succeed in your projects. What is your recipe for backing up your future projects, renewable projects, and do you seek for PPAs with some off-takers before you go to banks, or you are sufficiently strong enough with your own mother company? I mean, if you can reveal your sort of approach to this?
Yes.
Is it?
So this public, but all recipes coming at the price. So if you want, I can share, but it's with the price. So generally speaking, I can say this way that when you're trying to finance project-based, so one project to secure with the PPAs, that's one. Then you try to deal with the portfolio of the projects which are under construction and which are already operating. And if you have non-renewable production, then you are completely in different situation. So you can do some balancing by yourself. That's already your strength. And you can compose different products then. So if you have more production, then you actually easily compose base load product at quite attractive price. So basically, we are different this way from other developers because with the strength of the group, we can compose products that are not available for developers who are developing just one or two projects. So I would say so that this one is the difference. Still, whatever we will compose, we need quite stable legislation. So because we are entering in the quite long-term contracts, and how it's already been mentioned, the balancing market is quite unclear now. And, we're also using some financial measures to mitigate the risks. And if you will go to NASDAQ and you will see the price of these instruments after 2025, you will see that the price is crazy high. So this is the answer to a little bit to all those who are doing this synchronization, that guys, the market requires clarity. How it will be done, what will it happen, and what should we expect. Otherwise, we cannot do long-term PPA. So, going and agreeing about 5 years, that's already a challenge. But then saying to the consumer, and after 5 years we can prolong it, but we will recalculate the prices. And then the consumer say, well, I don't want to do it. So basically, there is no success story for everyone, just for us, hopefully. But as you see, we didn't win the tender, so it doesn't work always. But I think from our side, this is the portfolio management actually. For WINDMission, it will be other recipe.
Thanks a lot. Well, since our panel, we are supposed to sort of discuss PPA, and also I would like to spend a little bit of time on the future of wind energy. And I think it's a good time now maybe to open up to the audience and to maybe, is there anybody who wants to comment or raise some questions on PPAs and smart matters?
More of a comment, I'll share some experience as a lender's technical advisor or technical advisor to two of the biggest corporate PPA arrangements that were done in 2018. The two main reasons that they wanted them. One was vanity, they want to be green. And if Lithuania is already racing towards 100% renewable energy, that's already out of the game, there's no point because they're going to get there anyway. And then the second one, was the long-term thing, was if you look at some of the clients, and we shouldn't name them, they have large data centers and they have contracts for huge amounts of time. So the contract that they have so that their data is beyond 5 and 10 years, it goes longer. And in which case their business model is slightly different and they're not looking at 2 or 3 years, they are looking at much more. That's why they're willing to extend that way. But I don't know if any of them are with you in your answer, sorry.
Thanks, indeed. Yeah, I mean, one of the issues, of course, is that probably Lithuania is still lacking so big sort of off-takers who would have a stable consumption and a big interest in huge electricity green workload. But
can I take this? I would like to say that forget Lithuania. We are dealing in the Nord Pool market, so it means well. It comes with a price, then you go into the system price and then to exact market. But still, you can trade with everyone in this market. So I always saying to everyone, forget that there is just Lithuania. We are part of quite a big market. So and then well. Then we can benefit from the Microsoft's data centers and other things.
Yeah.
So and they can benefit from the windmills installed in Lithuania as well. So this is just a matter of how widely you are looking for the consumers.
It's a great comment, but on the other side, even if you want to, you can forget that we're in Lithuania or that we're in the Baltic states. We are part of the larger market. But if you want to exit to another zone, pricing zone, and if you want to conclude a contract beyond 5 years, it's basically, well, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very difficult to control the risk. So this is, I think that's the difficulty. But to be frank, I don't have a recipe, how to resolve it in this kind of situation. So what Linas has mentioned is portfolio management is probably one of the solutions.
Or another aspect is we are talking probably here, if we talk about PPAs with different pricing zones, so I think probably the financial instruments have to interplay there. Here we are talking more not about the sale of electricity, but sale of options and other derivatives.
So generally, based on what we've discussed, it's quite clear that it's much easier to do renewable energy projects now for Ignitis and Enefit than anyone else on the market, because they can do the balancing by themselves and they can offset certain disadvantages. And that is why we as independent developers were pitching the ministry and the government to say that this type of the support system, which does not fix the price at any level, it's okay, it leads to probably lower support from the government, but it might eliminate a lot of developers who just cannot do it. We took a risk, but many of our peers will not. And many of the projects that could be developed will not be developed, just because of the fact that there is a limited risk appetite in this merchant world, and that could lead to some kind of a different story than we're seeing today. Of course, that's good for Ignitis and Enefit Green. They will have more projects to choose. But the current legislation and the current support mechanism actually does not help anyone apart from the local incumbents.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Indeed, Gediminas, I think it's a great comment, and it nicely leads to sort of another chapter in this panel discussion is the future on wind energy. And here I would like to refer again back to Vytis and to a little bit sort of provide some reflection on what was discussed during the entire those 2 days. And we have heard sort of the reaction on the results, on zero bid results, and obviously it's good for the state, subsidy-free phase we entering and so on. But obviously we are also hearing what the industry is saying, that some kind of support scheme is also very much would be appreciated, simply to make the financial investment available at better terms. And a contract for difference is widely recognized internationally as a good tool to secure for the developers the financing when talking with the banks. And therefore my question is, what are your thoughts? Do you see the shortcomings? Or of course, you can say it's a success of the current auction tender, but do you see any place for the improvement in future tenders, and especially the tender, the auction for the offshore? And maybe there are some already lessons learned which you think maybe applied.
So 2 days, similar people and still being grilled yesterday and today and the PPAs, but I think what we're seeing now in Lithuania, so speaking of megawatts, 360 megawatts being developed, some of them, and most of them, all of them in the market conditions. So this raises a question for a policymaker, for the ministry, for the parliament, and all the parties, whether it's some intervention at this point is needed. I think it's a fair question. We want to have the stability, and I think we are not going to have any quick actions towards one or other direction. So what we are going to do is we need to have projects being developed, and on the other side to have a stable project development. So we will see, we hear in the market concerns regarding the revenue stabilization mechanism. Of course, we will hear that. But and we will see, how we can improve. But as of today, I think the next auction in May is going to happen. We don't even have the time to make some regulatory changes, which needs already law changes. So it's 3 months. It has to be super fast. And you have to convince the parliament, to change the system almost entirely. It has stress on the regulator to create a new system. So I would say, the instant changes throughout the process might have some more harm, towards the renewable energy development than the benefit. Of course, in the long term, without speaking about the offshore wind, speaking about the further development on the onshore wind, of course, we are listening to the market players, and we can upgrade the system to better match and to secure the good price for electricity as well as the financing price for the developers. So, in short, yes, we are eager to improve, but a small note, let's not make some harm during the improvement.
Absolutely, thanks Rita. I think it's a very encouraging thought that obviously I think the market, what they don't want actually is quick changes and changes to the process which works. And I think if we are talking about any improvements, or we're talking about very long-term improvements into those schemes which have not been yet, which are yet to be adopted. And obviously we probably refer mainly to the offshore and other modeling, how it could be structured. Well, I think probably I would also like to share, ask for sharing some thoughts about future modeling. Also, probably I will refer now, if I may, to Linas again on what, again, referring back to this notorious, sorry about that, but since the topic is related, so what you think the model look like? Because we are very much pleased to hear that the policymaker, the ministry, are sort of open to listen to ideas, improvements. And what do you think, in your view, are sort of the shortcomings of the current system and what could be improved? During these 2 days, I recall you mentioned that there was an aspect in the current bidding rules that the requirement to give up all the development works and the progress achieved is in your views, seems like being illegal or lawful and so on. So are there other sort of things which you think might be improved and would increase the motivation for the bidders and for the market?
Well, the things can be improved always. Yes, so that's the rule and that's what we expect. But in this case, I would say that is it good or is it bad? But it's already made. So say introducing now CRD or whatever other scheme, and it will raise the question for us, like for developers, what we are doing here. Because now the government was saying, okay, this is the first auction, and then there will be 3 auctions once after another. So, but now the government will say, no, but now we will change the rules. So no, this is also not that kind of approach. So okay, we have this one. We should admit that it has some pluses and minuses. So let's see how it will develop. But if we will start to change it dramatically, then definitely, as a market participants, we will start to raise questions the same way like with the previous dramatical change when you been forced to give up your developments just to have the right to participate in the auction, because with the previous legislation you didn't need to do it. So so I would say so that you can change a lot, you can change it every day, but the stability, that's what the investor buys. So whatever we have, if we understand how it works, then we can adopt and we can find the ways to work with it. If it changes every day, then there is no way to do the long-term investment. So, and just I have the microphone. So I should say, maybe I'm quite, always complaining about, but I should say that this government is the best over 16 years, because they done actually something. And well, maybe we don't like everything, but at least they done it the way that it's starting to work. So I will always be like criticizing everything, but actually deep in the heart I'm saying that actually thank you for doing the work.
Yeah, I think this government already the leaders have a sort of thick skin to hear all the criticism, but I think we're glad that they are here, they are on the table, and they are discussing this issue. So I think that's very important. Dominique, so what are your thoughts from Ignitis' point of view? I mean, well, Ignitis has been always, treated in the market well, not only as the only national champion, but also as a market maker, actually. So what are your views? What market do you want to have if we talk about offshore and incentive systems and so on?
I think the recent auctions have actually shown, as rightly noted, that there were how many participants? 7, I think. So there is 7. If you have 7 participants in an auction, which has the capped premium over market price of 3.86 euros per megawatt hour, which is less than 10% of the current or the market price at the time when the auctions took place. This shows that there is an appetite and that the incentivization is probably sufficient from the side of the government. I mean, we'll see what kind of auctions there will be coming in the next 3 rounds. But generally speaking, it shows that there is already a market for developers. And of course, I mean, it's up to the government to decide what is their key objective. Whether the objective is to actually stimulate the industry as such, the energy sector, or to have the lowest possible price for the users, for the consumers. So from our perspective, the incentivization is probably, I would say, sufficient at this level to develop large scale. And when it comes to something different, then I would say offshore is something different by nature. I mean, they are much larger projects. Then maybe there is something else we discussed what kind of scheme would fall into. So that's basically our view.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks. I think it's useful to hear. And well, Gediminas, we just been very pleased to hear, on your initiatives with partnership with G and so on. But are you sending a signal to the market that all these incentives, support systems, schemes are not required for the market, and the market is mature enough to go alone, sort of? What is the message you want to send?
So here, I think there are 2 sides. One side is that I do support Dominika saying that the support in the auction was very small in comparison to the actual, components of the project. So the maximum you could have expected is 10% over your revenues, but it's also capped. So, in good times you wouldn't be getting it. And then you would not definitely bid the maximum, so even if you bid something there, you would end up with maybe 2-3% improvement on your project if you are successful in an auction which would have yielded anything not than 0. So our understanding of that came already, I think, more than a year ago when the auction scheme was presented to review, and we decided that we will just go and try to do the projects without the auctions because we didn't see much added value, and we saw a lot of risks, especially risks in losing the work done, meaning that you have to forgive your prior developments in order to participate in the auction. And for this particular project, we decided that we will not do it because of this uncertainty. At this day, I would say that we would be standing in a situation where we would have elapsed 6 months or even more of potential development, would have lost the auction because I never would bid 0 in the auction, because I would just not participate in the auction if I had to bid 0. And at the end of the day, that's the situation. Is it a correct time to do merchant projects? Probably yes, because the technology has moved so much, and the LCOE, the levelized cost of energy with the newest turbines, is already below the levels of electricity forecasts, at least for a few years. The problem here is, as I said, the financing. We are overpaying the financiers. And it's not, how to say, the money goes out of Lithuania to investment funds elsewhere who have appetite for this risk. And there is quite a lot of money there. Yesterday, Giles presented that it's 2.5% difference on the interest rate on the full project. It might be even more if you calculate everything that you need to undergo in order to secure the financing. So from that point of view, kind of, yes, it's possible to do it, but the margins for the developer and for the owner of the wind park will not be large. You know, just the reason why we're doing is that our shareholders have decided that this is the right way to do, irregardless of whether we will earn 1% or we'll earn 10%.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think the message is taken and well understood. I'm referring back maybe to the audience and taking this chance. I think we are sort of coming slowly to our last part, and I think it's a good chance to address the panelists on issues that have been discussed on PPAs or on the vision of the wind market in general. Are there any additional questions on the market from the audience? Well, if not, I think we are sort of have done quite a lot. We have covered topics that have been supposed to be. So I would like to take a chance to thank you again for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your experience with us, and hopefully this contributes to educational, for both educational purposes and also for the purposes of making the market players like banks and financiers and other intermediaries more tolerant and knowledgeable about the instruments that have been discussed, and I have a sort of optimistic that the wind has a bright future, and as I just heard and read from a couple of slogans, wind never felt better, as Isis once said. So thank you again, and I am then closing the panel and give the floor to Isis. Thank you.